What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. What's going on, guys? We are covering Batman the Dawnbreaker, the story where Batman kills the DC universe. This is absolutely bonkers, but this is the first audio that I'm recording after we got back from New York Comic-Con. Man, all the members of the Rob Corps who showed up, dude, okay, check out this video. Check out this video real quick of like everybody, like the huge crowd that we got for the panel. Anyway, the cool thing about this is that initially, like when we first got up to the room, I saw like maybe 10 people and I was like, okay, I mean, that's cool. You know, like we have fans that show up, and as long as I get to hang out with fans, I don't really care how many show up. And then like I turn a corner and there's like 200 people lined up, and it was bonkers because they all start chanting like Rob Corps, Rob Corps. It was one of the coolest things. So we've got like the comic historian corps, we've got the Rob Corps, we've got the population from Comic Pop, all just gathered together in this massive room, and like it was so cool. Like it's so humbling to see so many fans show up. It's God, I never get past that, and I hope I never do. I love meeting and just like talking to fans like a regular comic book person, like just a regular comic book fan. Ethan Van Sciver, the guy who draws Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, is part of the Rob Corps. He got a Rob Corps ring. Like I gave him one. He told me to save one for him. I was like, what? No way. God, I love you guys so much. I love hanging out with you guys. It's like meeting you guys is like the coolest thing ever. It's so awesome. Like you guys get excited to meet me because you guys are fans of me. I love meeting you guys because I'm fans of you. So, or I'm a fan of you guys. It's always fun to hang out with you guys, to meet you guys. But anyway, on to the story, on to the whole thing. So Batman the Dawnbreaker is one of these stories where it almost draws on like the idea of Parallax, the old school Hal Jordan character, while at the same time changing things up a little bit differently. But initially what this does, the way it's written by Sam Humphries, is it takes the most logical course. It goes all the way back to Joe Chill, some guy who basically shot Bruce Wayne's parents in a dark alley and a mugging gone wrong. And then Bruce Wayne, instead of just kind of sitting there crying and then being discovered by the police, feels like absolutely nothing. He has no emotion whatsoever. He falls fully into this role of just being a sociopath. He doesn't feel anger, he doesn't feel rage, he doesn't feel fear. He feels completely and totally hollow. And in this lack of feeling, he's suddenly met with a Green Lantern ring, which simply just comes along and says, you have the ability to overcome great fear. Now, this is the caveat of the Lantern rings. The Lantern rings do not take your entire emotional spectrum into account. You know, it's not like you have the ability to overcome great fear, but you're kind of crazy. So like, we're not going to give you a ring. It doesn't work that way. You have the ability to overcome great fear. Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. That's the only stipulation you need. Now, immediately grabbing this ring and trying to kill Joe Chill, this is where things go bonkers, because remember, the first rule of the Green Lantern Corps is you cannot kill. And that's initially what holds Bruce Wayne back. You are not allowed to kill anybody. You know, lethal force is not permitted, and the ring stops him. Bruce Wayne's will overpowers the programming of the Green Lantern ring. Now, I cannot even begin to tell you guys how huge this is. This is when we start getting into Parallax. As far as I'm aware, the programming of the ring not allowing its wielder to kill people was a Jeff Johns creation, but it's designed to ensure the Green Lantern Corps exists as a peacekeeping force. Now, those of you guys who were at Jeff Johns' run, which again, you'll find all those videos down in the playlist, we cover them every Sunday, one of the things that was established was a Sinestro Corps War. The Sinestro Corps, led by Thal Sinestro, waged war against the Green Lanterns. In response, the Guardians of the Universe, the creators of the Green Lantern rings, removed this rule, and it allowed Green Lanterns to kill. In this universe, that doesn't ever seem to have happened. Bruce Wayne totally dominates the will's programming, literally makes the ring his own, and in turn destroys Joe Chill. Now, it's not the first time that we've seen a person overpower a Green Lantern ring. We saw that with Hal Jordan. Now, the way it was for years and years and years, you know, really before Jeff Johns took over the title, it was just the idea that Coast City was destroyed, and then Hal Jordan basically just freaked out. He lost his mind. He just started calling himself Parallax, and in return, he just obliterated the Green Lantern Corps, killed all the Guardians of the Universe except for Ganthet, who in turn took the ring of Hal Jordan and then gave it to Kyle Rayner, and that's how Kyle Rayner became a Green Lantern. In the Jeff Johns run, however, what we ended up finding out is that when Hal Jordan started calling himself Parallax, it's because he was infected by the Parallax entity. When Coast City had basically been destroyed, he felt fear, and fear was able to overcome his willpower. And because fear overcame his willpower, it opened the door for the Parallax entity to go into and to possess Hal Jordan, which is why he started calling himself Parallax. It was a huge retcon, but it worked really, really well in terms of how Parallax existed and so on. In this instance, Bruce Wayne is not possessed by the Parallax entity. Bruce Wayne is not controlled by this living embodiment of fear. Bruce Wayne is just a kid who's grieving over the death of his parents. And that's why this is so cool, is because there was an argument that took place between Batman and Superman in the Injustice comics. And Superman basically made the case, no matter what Batman does, no matter what Bruce Wayne does, no matter what he says, no matter what steps he takes to make Gotham a better place, in every single circumstance, Bruce Wayne is basically just still this little kid crying in a dark alley because his parents are dead. This hits home to that. You sit down and you read a Batman comic and you think about that for a second and you realize when he's fighting the Joker, when he's fighting the Penguin, when Jason Todd is killed by the Joker, when Tim Drake becomes Robin, when Nightwing takes off and says, I'm becoming my own character now, no matter what it is that happens, every instance of Bruce Wayne getting angry whenever he's fighting as a hero, he's still just this little kid crying over the death of his parents because that's the motivation for him. Now, the other half of this is that Sam Humphries kind of teases this extreme power of Bruce Wayne with a Green Lantern ring, because what he ends up doing is actually resurrecting his parents from the dead. Now, of course, they immediately go back to being dead after he realizes he can't return them to the way they were, but we've never seen an instance where a Green Lantern ring has been able to resurrect somebody from the dead. We've never seen a person who is able to dominate the extreme power of a Green Lantern ring and in turn resurrect the dead. Now, what this does is it basically hits home and it offers an indirect bolstering to the power of the Green Lanterns. And again, that's how these stories work. A person who was never originally part of the Green Lantern Corps, a person who does not exist in the main DC universe, a person in some story off out in the middle of nowhere will suddenly get a Green Lantern ring. And they'll do something with that ring that we've never seen done before. And then suddenly that becomes the standard. Suddenly it becomes, well, maybe somebody could do that later on down the line. If this creates a precedent, then it means that now in the main DC line of stories, we could suddenly see Hal Jordan just continue to advance his own willpower to the point that he can resurrect people from the dead. Again, getting back into the story, the whole idea is that with Bruce Wayne having a Green Lantern ring, suddenly he just begins dominating and killing every single villain he comes across. Now, this is one of the things that I like about this version of Bruce Wayne. What all these villains have shown is that they're incorrigible. They're unwilling to change. The things they do result in the deaths of countless people, whether it's through peddling substances, robberies, different things like that, or just having people taken out because they're opposition. Whatever the case may be, he just keeps going through and taking all these guys out. Now, we see these as somewhat of a flashback when he kills Scarecrow, when he kills the Penguin. We see these as flashbacks because he's literally talking to Jim Gordon. And while the Gotham Police Department is terrified of this teenage Bruce Wayne, what they basically come to terms with is the idea that people are missing around Gotham City. Criminals are just vanishing left and right, and no one knows why. But Jim Gordon suspects that Bruce Wayne is the one who's doing it. And that's what he does. He confronts him with this information and says, why are you doing this? Now, the other half of this is the other part of the power that Bruce Wayne's created for himself. Again, when it comes to the Green Lantern mythos, their ability to create constructs is directly proportional to how confident they are in themselves, as well as their ability to control the green part of the emotional spectrum, the will aspect of the emotional spectrum. And so with Bruce Wayne, because his will is so extreme, he in turn is not only able to create constructs, he actually creates constructs that are part of himself. Now again, this is a stark difference from what we've seen before, because we've seen Batman with a Green Lantern ring before. Hal Jordan gives Bruce Wayne his Green Lantern ring and says, just use it, see if you can pull it off. And in this story, Batman uses the ring and is able to conjure constructs of his parents, but it's wildly difficult to do. But in this instance, in this alternate universe story, when he's younger, when he's a kid, in the emotion of his parents dying, the total sadness that he feels, his willpower to basically fix everything is extreme. And the reason why is because this hits at how Bruce Wayne used to be versus how he is now. Over the years, Bruce Wayne, the way he functions is a reflection of his wisdom. It's a reflection of the fact that sometimes you can't just go in guns blazing. Sometimes it's more about politics than it is about running in and just beating up the bad guy. Now, over the years, he's learned finesse. He's learned that you have to have a little bit of guile if you want to achieve your goals. In this instance, he is a teenager. He's a young man whose parents were killed as a kid. He was basically given this godly power, and in turn, between his imagination, between the fact that he wants everyone to suffer the way he does, he literally takes this emotional spectrum and just kind of merges it with his own soul, and he creates these sort of hybrid constructs where it's basically referred to as the darkness, but it's the darkness in Batman's soul. And so it's almost asking the question, what would happen if Bruce Wayne's hollow nature were to pollute the emotional spectrum? Then what would take place? Well, that question is answered when, after it is that he kills Commissioner Gordon, he's immediately met by the Guardians of the Universe and the Green Lantern Corps. And what he does is literally just initiate this blackout. And these constructs that he's created in this void of his own soul are virtually indestructible. It's almost like whisking a person off to another dimension. And it's absolutely insane because while we don't necessarily see what happens, we basically end up finding out that these constructs he's created obliterate the Guardians of the Universe. They obliterate the Green Lantern Corps. Everyone is completely destroyed. And so going forward, he simply just starts calling himself the Dawnbreaker. Now, this is crazy because the Guardians of the Universe are insanely powerful. I mean, they are some of the most powerful beings in existence. It would literally take somebody channeling the entirety of the emotional spectrum in order to be able to take them out. And that's what Bruce Wayne's doing. Again, the idea here, the statement made by the Guardians of the Universe is you have to stop. What you're doing is polluting the emotional spectrum. And that's exactly what he's done. It's taking ink and putting it in, putting a drop of it in a beaker of water. It's just going to spread. It's just going to go everywhere. Eventually, it's just going to be nothing but darkness inside that beaker. That ink will basically taint that water forevermore. And that's what they're saying here, is that he's just polluting that aspect of the emotional spectrum. He's going to destroy everything. Now, of course, this coincides with the beginning of the destruction of his own Earth. And this is when we basically start hitting into this idea that when it comes to these alternate reality versions of Batman, their universes are being totally obliterated for reasons that we haven't fully fleshed out yet. It's believed that like these finite laws of the universe are being broken, that the destruction of these universes are because of the fact that these different versions of Bruce Wayne are doing things they're not supposed to. And so again, it's kind of cool, but we actually end up picking up with the Man Who Laughs, this Jokerized version of Batman. He looks amazing. I just want to say that he looks so awesome. He looks so cool here. But it's basically this idea of saying, I am recruiting people for Barbados, building up the ranks, building up all these different folks. Now again, this seems to have taken place long before the events of like Dark Knight's Forge, the casting, but building up these rosters literally leads to Dawnbreaker Batman showing up in the DC universe. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to hold off until this very point are the nature of these worlds that these evil versions of Batman are coming from. Think about the DC multiverse in terms of just the numbering. Think about it as like a number chart, right? Like you've got 0 in the middle, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 going to the positive side, and then you've got -1, -2, -3, -4 going to the negative side. What DC's doing is they're building up Earth Prime in the DC universe, which is to say the stories you've been reading since the New 52 first started. They're building that up is like the center point of the entire multiverse. It is the singular middle point at which everything branches out. And so what it does is it would literally allow a person to enter into this world and then by extension enter into other worlds. So it's like walking into a room with a room full of doors. It's interesting in terms of how that happens. But the idea here is that him facing off against Hal Jordan shows him arriving with powers that Hal Jordan's never seen before and that the ring cannot interpret. The knowledge of a Green Lantern ring is contextual and is basically limited to the universe in which that Green Lantern ring was created. And so because of that, the Green Lantern ring that Hal Jordan wields does not know anything about the constructs that Bruce Wayne wields because they're not from the universe where Hal Jordan's ring came from. And so again, that's why this works, because it basically hits home with this idea that now it's going to be this mad dash to figure out exactly how his constructs work, what the weakness of his constructs are, and how those constructs can be defeated. But again, it's basically this Green Lantern Batman from an alternate reality popping up in the DC Rebirth universe and then just immediately dominating Hal Jordan. But again, much like we saw with Red Death, Dr. Fate pops up and whisks him away. Now keep in mind, Dr. Fate is like the Doctor Strange, so to speak, of the DC universe. I mean, Dr. Fate predates Doctor Strange, but in terms of the roles they play, Dr. Fate is really more of these guys where he just kind of watches everything unfold and then simply says, okay, either I'm going to intervene on behalf of the Fates or I'm not going to intervene because the Fates don't want me to. But in this instance, it's him basically whisking Hal Jordan away and saying, yes, you're going to have to live through the destruction of Coast City all over again, but you are needed elsewhere. What this does is it teases the possibility of the return of Parallax Hal Jordan. Because remember, the original Parallax Hal Jordan popped up because of the fact that Coast City was destroyed. If DC ends up deciding to just like make Parallax Hal Jordan, this would be the time to do it. Now, I don't see DC doing the same gag twice. I mean, it's just wishful thinking on my part. I really wish it would happen. But the cool thing is here in this instance is basically the entirety of Coast City being covered in darkness, basically being whisked away to this dimension Dawnbreaker Batman had created in his own universe. So again, it's pretty wild. Dark Knight's Metal, man, best thing to come out of DC Rebirth. It is amazing. Anyway, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.